everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Chris's Classic Cinema, Wisconsin Legends. My name is Chris Wyatt.
I'm Jayden.
So, last episode we talked about the Oscar winner Spencer Tracy. Today we're talking about another Oscar winner from right here in Wisconsin. And this guy was from Kenosha. Now, he had quite a wide range of roles in his career, like musicals, comedies, dramas.
Sci-fi.
Yes. I'm talking about Kenosha native Don Ameche. He was born in 1908 and was raised in Kenosha. I found out that one of his cousins was actually a Wisconsin Badger and was an NFL champion back in the 50s. Now, when it came to Don Ameche, he had a really long career, spanning from the 30s all the way up to the early 90s. And when it came to this guy, most of his films were done through the studio 20th Century Fox. Now, we're going to be talking about 4 films that he was in that are really interesting. One of them earning him an Oscar. But when it comes to his films, I gotta say, some of them were pretty interesting.
Very wide range of films he selected today. Very wide. I don't think it's very rare that we get this wide of a range of genres in a given film. It's also kind of rare that we get more thought-provoking films, because 2 of the 4 films are very thought-provoking. One of them is controversial, and the other one, well, is this first one that we're going to talk about.
Yes. So, starting off, we're going to be going back to 1937 with one of the films that made him a star. Now, this film takes place during the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, which happened the same day as the Peshko Fire up north.
Because Chicago always has to get one in over us, don't they?
Yeah. With that, I am talking about the 1937 drama In Old Chicago. 3 brothers of Irish immigrants find themselves in the bustling city of Chicago during the 19th century. One of them ends up becoming a businessman who falls in love with a showgirl, and it also finds himself into politics, while his brother is more conservative and ends up even running for mayor. Mm-hmm. And it all climaxes with the Great Fire of 1871 that changes all of their lives. I gotta say, this was really interesting.
I felt the pacing was a bit off right up until the fire itself, because there were certain parts of the movie that were a little bit of a slump, like in the early parts of the film, for example, where you get the buildup of first the father dying, and then them going straight into town and everything. I felt that the pacing was a little bit... Some places it was rushed, other places it was very slow.
Well, it sort of balances out then, in my opinion.
It does.
Yeah. Now, this film was a success at the box office, if I recall, and I can see why. I mean, it definitely has it has a great cast. It even has some great special effects.
Some really good special effects. I did feel like some of the cinematography could have been a lot better, especially with the opening scene where they're, immigrating to Chicago. I felt that scene in particular was kind of bland. And there were a lot of the shots, in my opinion, felt a little busy to me, especially the internal shots where you get interior shots of the nice, lavish Victorian homes. I felt those were really, really busy and made things kind of difficult to point out.
Yeah. So now let's talk about the cast. First now there are 3 brothers. One of them is sort of a side character because he ends up falling in love with a milkmaid, and they end up having a family. Mm-hmm. Now, the story revolves around the 2 older brothers. One of them, played by Tyrone Power, who ends up falling in love with a showgirl played by Alice Faye. Mm-hmm. And he's the sort of guy who just wants to use money any way he pleases.
And his mother is not thrilled about that.
He's also more into like the saloon life, and also the business aspects of things, like even conning people.
Yep, going as far, making sure that he, in fact, it's kind of plays into the role of politics a little bit too, him weaseling his way in politics, which is very apt for Chicago. Chicago in that time frame from the 1870s all the way through the 30s being basically the pinnacle of corruption political corruption.
And you have Alice Faye as the showgirl, who is very reluctant about being with him at first. There are times where it does feel like he's stalking her.
Yeah.
But there is some sort of on-off chemistry between them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Donnie Ameche as the brother, who is basically the conservative guy. He is a lawyer, and he ends up running for mayor in elections. Mm-hmm. And this does cause friction between him and his brother because of their different political and, life beliefs as well.
Yes. And especially much later in the film, that all comes into headway in multiple ways, not only via the fire, but also a lawsuit.
Yes. And then you have other characters too. I mean, there's this one guy that owns the saloon. He is trying to basically do everything he can to get on top, even when it comes to running for elections. Mm-hmm. He decides, you know what? I'm going to run for mayor. I have all this money. I might as well try to use it.
Yeah.
And then you have the mother of the three brothers, played by Alice Brady, and she's basically the heart of the entire movie.
She really is, and it's one of my favorite aspects of the movie. Definitely played the role of, I am a widow who's worked from nothing raising these three kids, and I'm gonna keep them in line and make sure that their head's on straight.
Yeah, I mean, she actually starts off in Chicago as a laundry lady who washes people's clothes. And it is because of a cow in the shed in the back that accidentally causes the Great Fire. Mm-hmm. It was based on an urban legend now this movie revolves around the idea of an urban legend about what caused that Great Fire in Chicago. And they say it was because of a cow kicking like a lantern or something.
Yeah.
And when it came to Alice Brady, she actually ended up earning an Oscar for her performance for Best Supporting Actress. Now, when it comes to production, I gotta say, this movie, when it comes to bringing the 19th century to life, they did a really good job.
They did. They did pretty okay in terms of bringing out old, dirty Chicago. Very much. Portraying as the original scene intended. An easy city with easy money. A lot of grit, a lot of dirt.
Very Gilded Age sets and costumes.
Yes, very elaborate sets and costumes that I felt were a little busy, but period.
And this was 2 years before perhaps the biggest film set in the 19th century of that decade, Gone with the Wind.
Mm-hmm. This was also, there was other cast people that were supposed to be slated for this film. Unfortunately, another really, really big movie was taking place at the time and being filmed at the time. And that's The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, one of the actresses that was in Wizard of Oz was slated for this film, but then suddenly passed away tragically.
Oh, okay. I know that when it came to Alice Brady, this was the last. I know that she died a few years after this film.
Maybe she's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Now when it comes to special effects, when it came to the Great Fire, they did a really good job.
I agree.
You can really feel the heat.
Oh yeah. Which is difficult to do, especially with black and white film that old. And in my opinion, the cinematography, it could be better, but that was probably one of the strongest features in the film was the fire.
There was also the chaos of the people too. Next thing you know, there's this whole angry mob that wants to take out the brother played by Donnie Ameche because they want to blame him for the cause of the fire.
Well, everybody needs a martyr.
Yeah. And when it comes to it also has some pretty good action sequences.
Oh yeah. Some real good ones.
Yeah. And all in all, I gotta say, this movie should be seen at least once if you're a fan of those old style disaster films.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It's a one-time thing. I don't know if it would be one I would recommend to watch over and over again, but I'd say give it a once over and see if you like it.
Yeah.
It's easy to find. It's shockingly easy to find.
Yeah. I also found out that when it came to Tyrone Powers, Alice Faye, and Don Ameche, they're actually all three of them would star in another movie together a year later in the musical Alexander's Ragtime Band, featuring music from the great songwriter Irving Berlin.
Mm-hmm. Well, overall, Chris, what are you going to give this movie?
Well, I gotta say first that when it came to this movie, it actually ended up getting 3 Oscars.
Oh, no kidding.
No, I mean, well, it was nominated for 6 Oscars, including Best Picture. It did win 2, including Best Supporting Actress Alice Brady, and it actually won an Oscar that was actually very temporary for the 30s. It was called Best Assistant Director.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, assistant directors, if you don't know, are responsible for helping create the production, handling the production of the film. They also deal with like filming locations and all that stuff, and I can definitely see sort of why it won, especially when it came to the whole fire sequence.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they wanted to make sure people were safe.
Yeah. Well, furthermore, it's also easy to see why that really didn't last too long, because nowadays you really don't need an assistant director, or if you had one, there's probably multiple assistant directors.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, and all in all, when it comes to this movie, I honestly would give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars.
I'm coming in right under you at 3 out of 5. I do think, again, I mean, you already heard my criticisms. I think the cinematography is a little weak. I think the set design and in some places are a little weak, and the pacing's a little off, but that's all subjective.
And frankly, I can't think of any other films that take place during the Great Chicago Fire.
There isn't many. There isn't many.
Yeah.
Maybe this is one of the movies that needs one of those reboots.
And like I said, the fire happened the exact same day as the Peshtigo Fire.
Mm-hmm.
And that caused a lot more deaths than the one in Chicago.
Oh yeah. And a lot more damage, a lot more money was lost.
Yeah. So that was in old Chicago. Now for our second film, we're going to head to 1940 with what was actually like it was the American film debut of a very popular Brazilian actress of the 40s. I'm pretty sure some of you know of the name Carmen Miranda. She was famous for wearing hats, fruit hats, and basically dancing to Brazilian music.
Mm-hmm.
This was the film that basically made her an American celebrity. And that is because of something called the Good Neighbor Policy. During the 1930s, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt wanted to create both political and cultural bonds with North America and South America, especially with World War II around the corner. So with that in mind, they decided to when it came to Brazil, they decided to choose like Carmen Miranda as an ambassadress, and she would star in many musicals during the 1940s.
I only have one question. What movie are we talking about?
This was the film that was her American film debut. She already done films before in Brazil, but this movie was also with Don Ameche, and this film, Down Argentine Way. In Argentina, the son of a racehorse owner falls in love with an American girl, despite her father having a sort of feud with a relative of hers because he felt like he was cheated. Now, when it comes to and of course a spark forms between the son and the girl, and they end up finding themselves helping a horse, possibly winning a race down in Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was an interesting film. I mean, it was okay in my book. I can definitely see why it was popular at the time.
Which just surprises me, because this seems like the kind of movie that would be right up your alley, a little bit of comedy, a little bit of romance, and a lot of really, really good music.
That is true. I mean, when it came to the title song, it was actually Oscar nominated. It lost to the song When You Wish Upon a Star from Pinocchio.
It's Disney, yeah. Of course they're going to lose to Disney.
Yeah, well, if anything, this movie... Now, when it comes to this movie, I wouldn't say it's like the most accurate depiction of Argentina.
Oh, gosh, no.
In fact, this was actually... In fact, when it was actually originally released in Argentina, the locals down there hated this film.
Oh yeah, yeah. This was a very loathed film. And when I was watching the movie, I was thinking to myself, "Wow, I suppose there is some depiction of this, but this doesn't really feel Argentinian to me." The film did not feel that Argentinian to me. But maybe it is the 1930s, 1940s. Maybe my perception of Argentina was a little bit different now compared to back then. But after hearing about how loathed it was in Argentina, I was like, huh, okay. I was a bit less off than I thought.
Well, when it comes to 1940s, I have seen like more accurate depictions of South American culture.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is this musical film called Brazil, and of course there's also the Disney film The Three Caballeros, which was it was also made courtesy of the Good Neighbor policy. Walt Disney even went down to South America to get like some of the local art and all that stuff, and also
Typical Disney faction, always doing their research.
Yes.
Always doing due diligence.
Yeah. And of course, it has changed a bit in the last 80 years.
It has, and that's why I was kind of giving it a little bit of a break. I didn't, I personally gave it a little bit of a break for that reason alone. But, because, the musical sequences are really, really elaborate, really colorful dress designs and very colorful set work.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the cast.
Mm-hmm.
First, we have Don Ameche and Betty Grable as the two people who fall in love. Don Ameche plays the Argentinian, and Betty Grable is the American who basically ends up in his path, and they fall in love. It's basically the typical rom-com of the 40s.
I'd say a typical rom-com of any decade.
Yeah, you're like, they're gonna get together.
It's kind of obvious.
And then you have the father, played by Henry Stephenson. He is very against a certain American because he felt like he was cheated.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have the horse hand, played by J. Carroll Nash, who is very who basically sort of a horse whisperer.
Yeah.
Yeah. You also have the girl's aunt, who basically is just embracing South America. Now when it comes to, and then you have Carmen Miranda. She's not like an actual character in this film. It's just her doing performances as herself. But you have the classic Brazilian dress, the fruit hat, and she's only in for like 2 scenes. But she does get top billing because they wanted to, I'm pretty sure 20th Century Fox wanted to cash in on her so that way they could get people into the theaters.
Yeah, they wanted to, and they also wanted to, play into the good neighbor policy by hiring Latin Americans.
In fact, I actually found out that when it comes to Carmen Miranda, her sister Aurora was actually in the Disney film The Three Caballeros.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when it comes to, and then you also have the Nicholas brothers doing a dance sequence, and they were some of the best tap dancers of that time. And I mean, I heard that when it comes to one of the films they did called Stormy Weather, the dance they did is considered one of the best dance sequences in cinema history.
It's easy to see why. Because again, it's just a really amazing dance sequence.
Their energy is up there, in my opinion, with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers.
Or maybe even a much younger Dick Van Dyke.
Yeah, that's true. Now, when it comes to the story, I mean, it is okay. I mean, it definitely has that. I mean, it's the basic story of there's going to be a horse race.
Yeah, and that's and there's a lot of hokey elements to it too.
I mean, there's this one guy that's sort of basically a tour guide to the girl, and next you know, he finds himself switching between people, and it really ticks off a guy. It just get a few good chuckles.
Yeah, there's a couple of funny moments where I was like, all right, and I moved on, but
yeah.
Nothing of note. Really?
Yeah, but when it comes to the way they represented Argentinian people, I definitely can say that it was very stereotypical.
And even Don's portrayal of an Argentinian, you could tell that his accent was just off throughout the entire movie.
Yeah. But when it comes to the cinematography, it is very colorful. They wanted to bring South America to life.
Well, Technicolor was very new at the time, and they were looking to flex it.
I mean, they did have some pretty nice full shots of the Buenos Aires of that time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And think about how much the city has changed in over 80 years.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Buenos Aires is one of the biggest cities down in South America, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, there's a lot more to Argentina than horse races. I mean, there's also gauchos, there's charcoal barbecues called asados. I swear the meat looks so good on those.
Huh. All right.
Yeah, open charcoal fires with fresh cut meat, and my God, they look so good.
Huh. I mean, I know that Argentina is like the second oldest democratic republic in both North and South America, but
yeah,
maybe we have a lot more common than just that.
And when it comes to the good neighbor policy, like I said, this was a way for Franklin Roosevelt did it to create both political and cultural bonds with North and South America, with World War II happening in Europe.
Well, it's easy to understand why, with Argentina definitely being courted by Germany at the time. And, you know, we saw that even well past World War II, that Argentina was a safe haven for a lot of high-ranking Third Reich members who were on the run.
Yeah.
So this was like one of those movies that was attempting to kind of be like, no, be on our side, please. It didn't work. Unfortunately, it backfired.
Yeah, well, personally, in my opinion, I think the policy could be used nowadays.
No comment. I'm not saying a word.
Yeah, well, when it comes, maybe with other countries, in my opinion.
Yeah, that I'll agree with.
Now, when it comes to this film, I mean, it was a success at the box office. It did make a profit. It also received 3 Oscar nominations. Like I said, it was nominated for the title song. It was also nominated for cinematography.
Oh, yeah.
Now, when it comes, and like I said, this may not be the best film to come out of the Good Neighbor policy. I would definitely recommend others. Like, I know there is the 2 Disney films that were made courtesy of the Good Neighbor policy. The Three Caballeros and its predecessor, Saludos Amigos, which is sort of like a semi-documentary of their trip down to South America. As well as also, in 1944, there was this musical film called Brazil, and I really enjoyed that. Yeah. Now, when it comes to this film, I'm going to be generous and give it about 3.5 out of 5 stars.
Wow, that is generous. I was going to be kind of mean and say like a 2 out of 5, but most of the reason why I'm giving it such a low score is because it's a romantic comedy musical. I don't like romantic comedy musicals. I'll concede that it's got lovely set design, and I'll concede that it's got very, really, really good music. But the comedy was weak, the storyline was weak, and it was culturally not that great either, not that accurate.
Yeah, well,
so it's all those things. It's the combination of all those things. Death of a Thousand Cuts in my book.
Yeah,
that make it such a low score for me, at least.
And I know Carmen Miranda was in many other films as well during the 40s.
Oh, yeah.
One of them I would recommend was actually directed by Busby Berkeley, called The Gang's All Here. It has this classic choreography, but it's in Technicolor.
Perhaps that's one we should revisit someday.
Yeah, maybe. So that was Down Argentine Way. So now we're going to head to 1943 with a film that I honestly thought was really good.
Oh, same here. I thought that was a very touching movie.
Yeah, it has a very heartfelt story. It also deals with very strong themes.
Mm-hmm.
And it also has definitely a lot of heart.
It does.
I am talking, now in 1943, I'm talking about the film directed by Ernst Lubitsch, who we'd already reviewed before, his Christmas film, The Shop Around the Corner. Now this film, Heaven Can Wait. An old man finds himself in the in the reception room to the bad place, and he tells the receptionist his backstory about how he thinks he actually deserves to be down there because he was basically a playboy despite being married.
Mm-hmm.
Now I gotta say, this was a really good film.
Yeah, it was a very, very good film. You're basically following this boy who was born as a product of nepotism, and you see him committing, just going through life being basically a playboy, but also you do see moments of redemption here and there, which works in his favor at the end of the film. That part I won't spoil, but overall, it's the story of someone that is living life large, but living it kind of recklessly, with very little duty to care. But you also see, there are moments where there are people that care about him, and that feeling is reciprocated.
Yes, I mean, yeah. And when it comes to the cast, I mean, Don Ameche, he was really good.
Oh yeah.
I'm honestly disappointed he didn't get an Oscar nomination for this.
Quite frankly, as am I. This is probably one, out of the three we've discussed so far, this one's probably the heaviest hitting one and one of his best performances.
I mean, he's the typical guy who basically wants to hang out with any girl he meets, and he ends up eloping with his cousin's fiancée, played by Jean Tierney, who is most famous for her role in the film noir film Laura. Good
choice, honestly.
Yeah. And when it comes to their chemistry, you can definitely tell that even though sometimes she can't stand him, there's still that spark.
Yeah. And that's very hard to find. That's a very, very hard relationship to portray in film.
I mean, you have the guy that basically wants to hang out with girls despite being married. And when it comes to their chemistry, it was really good.
Yeah, there's actually a real-life relationship that kind of reminds me of, actually. And that's the relationship between Prince Charles and Princess Diana. Or King Charles and Princess Diana.
Oh, interesting.
Well, yeah, because you have two people who clearly have a spark, but are in completely different worlds.
Yeah. You have other characters, too, like you have the grandfather, who is actually very supportive of his grandson, despite his rather non-conservative activities.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
He even helps him get his wife back when she moves back to her parents in Kansas. You also have the cousin, who is basically the nerd of the family. He's also the very sophisticated guy. I found out that when it came to the younger version of him, played earlier in the movie, it was actually played by Dick Jones, who was the original voice of Pinocchio in the Disney film.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you have the parents. The dad is they're basically spoiling him.
Oh yeah. And the mother is, very much like trying to keep them in line, but obviously in their own, again, separate universes.
You also have the in-laws who want nothing to do with their daughter after she elopes with him.
Understandable. Understandable. It's an understandable, that was definitely an understandable exchange.
And then you have the receptionist of the bad place, and he's actually he's not as malicious as other depictions have in the past.
No, but again, that's something that I kind of want to have the viewers at home kind of go and find out for themselves, because that is because if we talk about that much further, we start diving into deep philosophical talk. And I feel like that's something that really ought to be discovered on one's own journey.
That I can agree with. When it comes to the sets, they really give that sense of, this is an early 20th century home, and it...
Oh yeah, not just the sets, but also the range. Because you're depicting anything from the 1870s all the way to the 1940s. That's a heck of a range to try and portray.
Especially since this movie takes place in New York City during the time when it was growing.
That's really difficult to portray, especially back then, especially during World War II. Because this is peak World War II at the moment. So one's got to wonder how the heck they pulled it off.
Well, matte paintings?
Yeah, well, maybe, but I couldn't tell they were matte
Yeah,
paintings.
well, along with that, there's also, it does get a few good laughs now.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I got at least one good laugh. It was right at the beginning. You have this old acquaintance that the guy meets at the reception, and the reception is like, okay, bye-bye. And she just goes right down into the flames.
Really? The thing that got me was actually $6.
What?
With the one French woman at the beginning of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
The $6 was worth it.
Yeah.
Again, go watch the movie. It's worth it.
Yeah, I gotta say, this movie does...
I like it. It's a good... This one was, unironically, surprisingly, my favorite of the four that we're discussing.
Yeah. And Don Ameche, like I said, I definitely think he should have gotten an Oscar nomination because he was really good in this.
Mm-hmm.
Then again, this was the same year as Casablanca.
Oof.
Even Humphrey Bogart didn't win for it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's hard to...
But this movie, and when it comes to Heaven Can Wait, it was nominated for 3 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director. It lost both of them to Casablanca.
Mm-hmm.
It was also nominated for the cinematography, which is very nice.
It's very good.
And I also think the script should have been nominated too, because this was actually based on a play, and they did a really good job. I mean, you have a guy, it actually does have that crazy idea of a guy eloping on his birthday,
Mm-hmm.
and then every anniversary is his birthday. So all in all, what would you give this movie?
Oh, I'm giving it a 4 out of 5.
Me too. This movie is definitely...
Go watch it. Go.
If you're
Right
looking
now.
for a good old-fashioned romance drama, comedy drama, this is it.
Yeah, this is way better than Down in Argentina Way. That's way better. Go.
Yeah. And when it comes to this movie, I might be tempted to watch it again sometime.
Honestly, me too. Just a nice big blank wall here. We put a screen on and just film it. Just, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. And also, don't confuse this film with the Warren Beatty film from 1978.
No. Don't.
They have the same name, but they're differing stories.
Mm-hmm.
So that was Heaven Can Wait. Now, Don Ameche, after the 40s, took sort of a little break from film and did some TV movies. By the 80s, he was back doing films. One of his first big films was the Eddie Murphy comedy Trading Places.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not reviewing that. We're reviewing a film that was made in 1985 and earned him the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, the only Oscar of his entire career.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this film is a sci-fi film, but I gotta say, this was, in my opinion, really good.
It's really good, but it's kind of out there. It has some, in itself, some really, also, just like the first one, actually has some similar dark themes.
Now, this film was directed by Ron Howard,
Mm-hmm.
the guy responsible for some big films like Apollo 13, Jim Carrey's The Grinch, A Beautiful Mind, which won Best Picture of 2001. Recently, he did the Star Wars movie Solo.
But before any of that, his first film, one of the first films he's ever directed, he's done a couple other movies, but this was like his first time in a very unusual position because he's very, very young. But anyways, go on.
Yes, and this was also one of the top 10 highest-grossing films in 1985.
85 was a banger year.
I mean, you had Back to the Future, the Best Picture winner, Out of Africa, although that gets some hate nowadays.
Daryl came out in 85.
Prizzy's Honor with Jack Nicholson and Angelica Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And this film is a sci-fi film like Back to the Future, but they have very different themes. This one, Cocoon. 3 elderly men at a retirement home in St. Petersburg, Florida, find themselves feeling rejuvenated after they go to a swimming pool filled with mysterious rocks. Next thing you know, they find themselves experiencing a close encounter of of pretty much the third kind, and it is very. I gotta say, this was very interesting.
That's a way to put it. I was gonna say bizarre. Bizarre is my word.
Well, to me, I would definitely compare this. I would definitely say this is like a mix between. This has the mystery of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, yet the heart of E.T. the Extraterrestrial, even though I know you hate that.
Well, actually, I was gonna kind of compare it closer to the kinship of Batteries Not Included. You know, you have a lot of that wholesome family sci-fi where there is some wholesomeness to it and some big life lessons to be learned.
Yes, and this had a really good cast. I mean,
Oh my God, a veteran cast.
Donnie Nishi, Wilford
Brimley.
Yes. Also, Hume Cronin, Jessica Tandy, Steve Guttenberg,
Ron Howard's parents.
as well as,
Both of his parents made an appearance in this movie.
as well as his brother Clint.
There's even a famous actor from the silent film age that made a cameo appearance in the pool scene.
Yeah.
Like they really brought a lot of actors came out of retirement. Actors and actresses came out of retirement for this movie.
Yeah, and I gotta say, Ron Howard did a really good job with this film.
He had a tall order too, because there were two other directors that were slated to do this. One of them decided, nah, I'm going to do Back to the Future instead.
Robert Zemeckis.
Robert Zemeckis was supposed to do Cocoon, but for whatever reason didn't, and then decided to do Back to the Future instead.
And that ended up being the highest grossing film in 1985.
Part of the problem was that, for Fox at least, it just spent a long time in the pre-production stage. It was conceived all the way back in 1980, didn't get greenlit until like 82, 83. And then they had a hard time finding a director that was up for the task. And then, of course, Ron Howard, being very young at the time, a child actor, born going in from child acting to directing. Basically.
Yeah, he started off in like the Andy Griffith Show. He was in the movie The Music Man, which we reviewed.
Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, he was really out of his element here because he is one of the youngest people to come from classic Hollywood, as it were. And now he's dealing with some really insane sci-fi special effects and a veteran cast. This movie had every reason to not work, and he made it work.
Yes. With that, let's talk about the cast.
Oh, yeah.
You have the three main guys from the retirement home. Donnie Nishi, Wilford Brimley, and Hume Cronin. Now they always sneak out of the retirement home to this abandoned swimming pool, and after they find mysterious rocks in it, they start feeling a sense of rejuvenation. It's like their own fountain of youth.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's also that other old guy played by Jack Gilford who is very bitter about that idea of basically breaking the laws of nature.
Oh yeah, cheating death, as it were.
Yes, and next, the three guys invite their girlfriends and wife to join them,
mm-hmm.
and they just start feeling more energy than they had felt in God knows how long.
Oh yeah. Now there are some hokey parts of this movie, like there is this breakdance scene that's like okay. It's the time. It's the product of the time, but
and you can honestly tell that it was a stunt double. To me, it was as obvious as Jennifer Beals' double in Flashdance.
However, most of the actors and actresses did insist on doing most of their own stunts.
Yeah, and when it came to Don Ameche, he did a really good job.
Walking 4 miles a day to just keep every morning, and even Wilford, who was, by the way, only in his 50s at the time.
They actually had to do makeup to make him look older.
Yeah, struggled to keep up with time.
Yeah, and when it comes to his grandson, he's played by the boy from The Never-Ending Story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it is a superstar cast that Ron Howard had to wrestle with, because all these actors and actresses came from all sorts of different sorts of film backgrounds. Don Ameche came from a very staunch background of sticking to the script and storyboards and sticking to the director's directions, while some of the other actors were more of kind of a little bit more loose with it, did a little bit more improv. And then you have some of them that were just more action stunt artists. So a lot of different styles coming together in this sort of compilation.
And then you have Steve Guttenberg as the guy who discovers the, spoiler alert, aliens.
Mm-hmm. That's the only spoiler we're given.
Yeah, and he ends up sort of forming a relationship with one of them, played by Gwen Verdon.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a nice little chemistry, but I mean, it's one of those sort of intergalactic relationships you would find in like Star Wars or even Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to and this movie does get some laughs too. I mean, this is a drama, but it does have a little bit of comedy.
It does have a little bit of comedy.
I mean, you actually see the old guy swimming in the pool, and next you know, they're playing cards with an actual alien.
Yeah.
And they are not giving they don't care at all.
Nope. They're kind of just going with it.
But this movie is definitely really deep.
It is a very deep film.
It has some very deep themes of the sense of, old age and basically mortality in general.
Mm-hmm.
It also has some like sort of symbolism as well, especially with the ending.
Oh yes, but again, we're not going to really dive into that too much.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something that anybody needs to watch. But unfortunately, it really didn't win any awards. Like, it did well coming out in the summer of '85, along with Back to the Future. Along with a bunch of other, like, '85, the summer of '85 was an amazing summer for films. A lot of really big box office hits. But that also meant that Cocoon, being a little bit of a deeper film and a little bit more of an unconventional film, got the short end of the stick.
Well, now let's talk about the production, because most of the film was shot on location in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Yeah, in 2 different retirement homes, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
2 neighboring retirement homes in Florida.
And you also have the music played by the late great James Horner. I'm so glad I grew up with his music.
It was, and if you haven't heard the name before, you will soon.
Well, James Horner he was responsible for he did a lot of films with Ron Howard, like Apollo 13, A Beautiful Mind. He also did music for films like Braveheart, as well as some animated films like An American Tail, The Land Before Time.
Mm-hmm.
And of course Titanic, which earned him the Oscar. And this was one of his earlier films where he did scores. I think one of the first films he did was Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, he did 2 Star Trek films. He did Star Trek II and 3.
Yeah. Now when it comes to the special effects, I mean, they are really good.
For the day, yeah, sparing no expense, of course, with fantastic special effects, which again, totally on par with '85. There are some parts where
you can tell it's obvious, but
it's 1985. It's a 40-year-old movie this year.
Yeah, and this was like she said, this was the same year as Back to the Future. And
hard to compete. Yeah. Really hard to compete.
And yet apparently when it came to this film, it ended up winning 2 Oscars. Best Supporting Actor, Don Ameche, and Visual Effects.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the Future wasn't even nominated in that category.
No, but the only special effects was the flaming tires, to be fair, and the time travel sequences.
True. And when it comes to, when it came to the Cocoon, I think its biggest competition was probably that dark Disney film, Return to Oz.
Yeah. There are a lot of other films that were really, really big in '85, and I would say that the summer of '85 was probably like one of the biggest years in cinema ever. There are some other years where a little closer, like '93 was a good year. But,
yeah, I mean, like Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But going off topic, we're going a bit off topic here. What do we want to rate it?
I'm giving this 4 out of 5 because this movie was really good.
Giving it 3.5. I feel like it's a little bit out there, and it deals with some really hard subjects that personally I'm still struggling with.
Yeah. I know that this movie did get a sequel a few years later, but it didn't get as much love as this one.
No.
Yeah. When it came to Ameche, he kept doing films by the early 90s, he was still doing movies, but he died in 1993. One of the last films he did was the Disney family classic Homeward Bound: The Incredible Journey. He voiced a golden retriever next to Michael J. Fox and Sally Field as another dog and cat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's honestly still one of my favorite Disney films.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to Ameche, you can definitely tell that he had a wide career.
Very, very wide career. Very by the book. Very old school when it comes to his selection of films. In my opinion, probably one of the last great classical theatrical actors we'll see in quite some time. Like, there are others that have come after him, but but when it comes to the range, you know, we reviewed literally everything from like a semi-modern sci-fi to a classical western, basically.
Yeah.
And everything in between, quite literally.
Yeah, and when it comes to Wisconsin actors in general, the only other actor I could think of that
had that much of a range
would be Frederick March, because he did dramas, horrors, comedies.
Oh, I was gonna say Gene Wilder.
Gene Wilder.
Yeah, Gene Wilder also had a lot of range.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to, as you can tell, Ameche had a very big career, and like I said, Cocoon earned him an Oscar, the only Oscar of his career. But when it comes to our next episode, we're going to be looking at another Wisconsin. Well, he wasn't actually born in Wisconsin, but he was raised in Beaver Dam. And my mom actually claims to be a distant relative of his.
Okay.
Now, he was in a wide range of films, from film noirs to comedies. And now this guy was, if you're wondering who it is, his name is Fred McMurray. So that's going to be who we're going to be talking about after. And then we have a really big one we're going to do for our season finale.
Oh, yeah.
Until then, I'm Chris Wyatt.
And I'm Jayden.
And thanks for watching this episode of Chris's Classic Cinema. See ya.